Alice Oswald. We begin the count again every November, and so this year's list begins in Georgia, in Tbilisi, with an unknown woman who will not be the last we will not name this year. Ben-Gizzy Fowler gunned down in front of her home just days before last year's memorial, but too late for the lists. Ben DeShawnda Sanchez shot while she pounded on a door asking for help. Kemori Shatoya Johnson shot in Albany, Georgia, USA. And Marisol Almeida found in Ecuador on Christmas Eve, 2014. And this year, Pappy Edwards was the first to die. On a January morning, before the day had time to warm, found shot dead in the parking lot of the Fern Valley Hotel. And with Pappy, this year's dance began. Conflicting genders in the news reports, refusal to investigate as hate crime, all the same old songs as when a bullet entered Lamia Beard's body, and blood began to pool beneath her where she lay down on the sidewalk, and her dead name bubbled up from some reporters' throats with talk of past convictions, as if they were trying to imply this world was somehow just, that bodies like Lamia and Pappy's had committed some sin other than not being white, not being cis, not being right, not fitting in. And what sin was committed by the unknown woman shot to death in Badba, Pakistan? For what crime was Pio da Silva tortured to death in Brazil, as if anything justifies that? As if Ty Underwood did anything more than tell her cis boyfriend she no longer wished to see him. As if Hande Onku did anything more than move to Turkey seeking refuge as so many cis women would seek it this year. As if Yasmin Bash Payne did anything other than argue with her boyfriend. Now one is lost to the full stops left by bullets. One lost strangled, naked, her hands and legs bound. The other to the lines, blades drawing flesh. As if Leo, in Brazil, deserved the pictures of her body on the websites reporting her shooting. As if Pata in Brazil had deserved to be strangled. As if Didinha deserved to be shot. Some had not turned the pages of their calendars when Joyce Akira was brought down by bullets, a teen. And Taya Gabrielle de Jesus was found in a stairwell, an activist, a woman of the church, giver of food to those who needed it, but a knife entered her multiple times, held, they say, in the hand of a man who hung himself a block away. And they didn't call it a hate crime. Like Penny Proud, just got shot by a robber. Easy to explain it all away when you look only at the bullet's path and not the path that led a body to transect it. Easy, too, to get a name and pronouns wrong. This they did. Those left behind so often have to fight to give the dead their names. They fought for Penny. They fought over what to call Bry Golek, whose family called her Man after her death. It was her father's hand which held the knife that stabbed her. Two stories clashed in Akron on a February night. Only one needed to kill. Christina Gomez Reinwald had two names, for work and life, and died twice. Once thought suicide, later ruled homicide. Another woman murdered by her boyfriend, some said her ex, who took the life of the woman they sometimes called Christina Grant Infinity, her name a kind of prayer. Raisa, stabbed to death in Campina Grande, was granted only 19 years, and Capitu Santos was 31 years old when the final knife entered her body. And now, for the first time, I say an unknown woman was shot somewhere in Brazil. I will add more to that number. Sumaya Dalma was sometimes known to use the surname Yusel. It was this name which appeared in the early reports of her death, a death unsolved. The same day, a 16-year-old called Lara was stoned to death, and 2 days later, a woman called Katie stabbed 10 times, both in Brazil. We will hear a lot more from Brazil. In the same single day, Natalia Ferraz and Diego Fernando Oliveira Santos were both lost to multiple bullets, like the sudden chaos of a storm, the bullet rain, explosion in the heavens, and terrible light. The police say Keisha Blight's death was definitely no hate crime. The same police who got her name wrong when reporting her death. So a murder in March was only known about in August. when a wind blows from the Gulf of Mexico, north of where another unknown woman was found with bullets in her, north of where Michael Lucas de Almeida Reginald was beaten and stabbed to death at the age of 13 in Sao Paulo, north of where Bianca Araujo was shot to death in Fortaleza, 21 years old, north of where Adriana was shot multiple times in Mato Grosso do Sul, north of where Lotinha was stabbed in Manaus, to London, from the warmth of the equator to a city cold in spring, so came Vanessa Santillan, from the city of her childhood to the city where she died, beneath the fists of spousal jealousy. Her bodybuilder husband cried she didn't take him seriously. After killing her, he visited a brothel. Such a morally serious man. A wrong turning on a road in Baltimore, and a woman dies at the guns of the NSA. Some say this doesn't count as murder. Call it tragic accident. I say state violence is still violence. I say there's nothing accidental in cocked bullets fired at black trans skin. I say Maya Hall belongs in my list. Vanessa Ganzaroli, stabbed again and again in Petrolina as some browse their first quarter reports. Have you been counting? Did you count Deborah, stoned to death in Mugi Miran? In Pakistan that month, count 2 unknown women murdered at a wedding a third lived but was raped. Victoria Camargo, shot in Venancio Aires. Bruna Michel, 20 years old, beat to death in Belo Horizonte. Bruna Kelthia, 15 years old, shot to death in Vila Velha. Another Bruna, in Vitoria, Espirito Santo, defeated, giving up the ghost to yet another gun. And another unknown woman, strangled in Manaus. Job Rodriguez da Silva, shot to death in Portobello. Step as careful as the deer between the grass and trees. Walk where you will not leave a footprint. Still the hounds will find the scent. Stones found the abdomen of Diosvani Munoz Urbana. They killed her. 2 men killed her. They surrendered to police as a couple. How many were behind the death of Stephanie, who was shot in Caucaia, of the unknown woman shot in Curitiba? Al-Maroof Beachley, found dead and mutilated in Pakistan. Who knows how many hands behind that? 3 women gunned down in that country. Saima Shahzadi, Shah Zaib, Billy, by a gang of men on bikes. La Monique de Roma, shot to death in Sao Paulo. 1 man killed London Chanel, her boyfriend. A domestic incident was how the police described it, as they would. We know a trans woman argued with a cis man, and we know which one is dead. We know so many trans women die in Brazil, and we know the names we know are just a fraction of their number. We know Vandressa Vinit is one of those names. We know she died by gunshot. No such little else about her. No more do we know at Tician Abramavel, dead the same day, not the only such day this dark year, nor the most deaths on a day. And more Brazilian deaths. Jean Waltrick, shot. Barbara Sodre, stabbed. Like the sand, where with a stick a child writes their name, and the sea comes and washes away what was written. North of the border, Mercedes Williamson was murdered at the age of 17. We know more about her than we know about Priscilla da Silva. We know she was shot. We know Francela Mendes Rodriguez went to see her friend Consuela and didn't come back. What do we know of Carol Mello, Andrea Amado, the unknown woman found in a shallow Brazilian grave, Kelly Silva, or Kwame da Silva? We know one was strangled, another was shot. All we know of one is her body was found. We know one was stabbed in neck and arm, defensive wounds, and one shot in the head. We know that Laura Vermont was seen running from Sao Paulo police. 2 of them murdered her. Think about that, and why we know so little of the others. Running, running, running. Eventually our strength is going to fail. We will run out of corners to turn, confront a dead end. Until then, run, and run. And think about Jasmine Collins. reported dead by her dead name for months, stabbed by a cis woman, the police said in an argument about some shoes. The same day, Sydney Araujo Claudino was shot in a drive-by, another day of 2 deaths, still not the worst of this year. And run, and run. We know less of Bruna J. Mendes, only that she was shot multiple times, as was another unknown woman in Brazil the following day. And run, and run. Daya Rani Kinnar ran for office in Uttar Pradesh. The killers ran from her home as a train thundered past. And days later, yet another unknown woman was stabbed to death in Brazil. Then a day of 3 deaths. India Nascimento, Ella Rodorta, Vanessa Calacha, the year barely half gone, and the next day Ashton O'Hara found dead in a field in Detroit. 2 days later, Erica Aguilera shot in the back in Dorados, a girl called Only Gabby beaten to death in Valparaiso de Goya. 2 days later, another 3 deaths. India Clark shot in the head in Tampa, Florida. Nephew Luther's shot in the head in Georgetown, Guyana. Another unknown woman found in Alicante, Spain. Can you see why there is talk of states of emergency? Of siege? In Fresno, California, Casey Haggard leans into the window of a car. A minute later, the driver she speaks to will slash her neck and drive away. The next day in Brazil, another unknown woman dead. Days later, Shade Schuler dead in Dallas, a body found in foliage in Brazil. The name we have been given is Patricia. With that, the dark summer began. Amber Monroe shot in Detroit, not for the first or second time, this one the last. Candice Capri shot in Phoenix, and they say nobody knows why. Tamara Dominguez ran over multiple times by an SUV. Every time I cross the road, I worry that this will be the intersection where a car speeds up, instead of slowing down. Elisha Walker's body dug up from her shallow grave. V.H.A. dos Santos shot multiple times in Brazil. Another Brazilian woman, Flower, beaten to death. This was August. And in September, Waleska Rayala was stabbed 27 times, and Marcela Chocobar was found, her body burned beyond the recognition of the eye. Only her DNA remained to tell the story. And in Brazil, Paulina. All we have is her first name, the location in Rio Grande do Norte, the cause of death, gunshots to the head and to the chest. Cien Alves de Matos Jr., stabbed and dismembered, 21 years old, on the same day Fernanda Olmos, one of 3 in Argentina whose murders would be noted by her president, but not until the 3rd. Ellie de Souza found in landfill with a knife stuck in her neck. Why was the one they called Melvin shot dead in Detroit? Uncertainty surrounds the gender, the orientation. They were read as a man in a dress, and shots rang out to underline the binary in cordite. And Keisha Jenkins was beaten by half a dozen men, shot in the back twice when she fell. Police admits the possibility her murder may be connected to her gender identity is something we are definitely looking into. Connected also to the colour of her skin. Admit the intersections of black and white, of rich and poor, of north and south. Connected to the death of Rafaela Capucci, yet another in Brazil. And the 3rd Argentinian death, Diana Sakayan, her country's most well-known trans activist. If she could die, then who else might? It only takes one knife, one gun, one angry fist, one car, one flash of hating recognition in the eyes. A coin spins at the edge of a moment, becomes a hurricane of coins, a kaleidoscope, a superposition. It will always fall one of 2 ways. It fell wrong for Zella Zayona, surrounded by 4 or 5 people, one of whom reached for a gun. And most recently, at time of writing, for Yoshi Tsushida. But I write his name down, knowing between today and tomorrow, there can always be more. Like the snow in which, with a stick, a child writes their name. An adult, melancholy, writes, another world is possible, knowing the snow will keep falling, erasing all that has been written. Writes, another world is possible, knowing the snow will keep falling, knowing the snow will keep falling.